I want to give you an update on my opinion about the 4090 after the reviews, okay? I was very excited to get one, but I'm just gonna hold on. And it's not because of the price. I don't care about the price. I think it's fair. It's a very powerful GPU. But here's the problem I have with it. I'm gonna show you this picture from the Digital Foundry NVIDIA DLSS 3 analysis. And also I'm gonna show you some footage from Joker Productions. I like his channel too. So he has the 4090 and a 9900K. And then I'm gonna show you my own performance. I'm gonna share with you my own performance on Spider-Man with my system. I have a 5800 X3D and a 3080 12 gigabytes. And I'm gonna share with you why I think it doesn't make sense for the C1, for the LG C1, and it doesn't even make sense for the CPU that I currently have, which is very, very good CPU for gaming. So, but this is the biggest problem I have with the 4090. So, I like two things. So there are two levels of performance that I am looking for with this LG C1. And the priority, so the way you build your gaming system, it has to be around your screen. That's the most important thing, because the screen is the final result. It's what you're going to see. The priority has to be the screen. It doesn't matter you have a 4090 if you're playing with a bad display, with a display that doesn't have a good contrast, and it doesn't have HDR. So it is crazy to talk about the 4090 and completely ignore HDR. HDR makes a much bigger difference than any graphical settings. You can have all the ray tracing you want on Cyberpunk, on SDR. I'm gonna show you Cyberpunk on this LG C1 on HDR, and this is gonna be a much better picture. I guarantee you that. So the screen is very important. The final result, what you're going to see, is very important. And there are two ways I like to play the games, two maximum level of performances that I'm looking for with this LG C1. One is HDR at 124K, okay, for sure. That's amazing. But the second one is 120 black frame insertion. So with black frame insertion, there is no HDR, but at 120 black frame insertion, you get over 240 hertz motion clarity, okay? So it looks better than a 240 hertz sample and hold display. Actually, based on the Alex, this Digital Foundry, Alex, you know who he is. He actually commented, and I show you that on a video before. He commented that he just got a C1, and he said 120 black frame insertion was looking better than a 300 hertz laptop screen that he has. So it is absolutely amazing. So those are the two main things that I'm looking for. So for 120 HDR, the 4090 is gonna work very well, but it's actually overkill. Okay, so you're gonna have to use NVIDIA deep learning super sampling and just get beyond 4K on Spider-Man, on a game like Spider-Man, for example. And that's going to work. It's gonna be an amazing experience. But I have to get both. And for black frame insertion, you need a rock solid 120 frames, which I cannot get with my 5800 X3D. Okay? So I get 120, but it drops to about 106, 110. And if I turn on ray tracing, I cannot get even close to that. So with ray tracing, I average 90 frames. I'm gonna show you that, but it can drop as low as 60. Almost never below 60 on the Big Apple, on Spider-Man. But yeah, so I would need to use DLSS 3.0. So that was the plan. Okay, I get DLSS frame creation engaged, and then I can get rock solid 120 and use black frame insertion. That would be amazing. That would be perfect. I can get the two ways I like to play my games: 120 HDR or 120 black frame insertion. But here's the problem, and I'm so happy that Digital Foundry they know this stuff. This was an amazing coverage here from Digital Foundry. I'm gonna have the link of this video on the description. So here's the problem. DLSS 3.0 frame creation doesn't support officially VSync. Why? Because the input lag is atrocious when you use VSync. So you have to force VSync on the NVIDIA control panel, and when you do that, look at this. The input lag goes from great to trash, 110 milliseconds. I think that's what I'm getting here with this LG C1. So this LG C1 can already do motion interpolation. It can do the same thing as the NVIDIA DLSS 3.0 frame creation. But the problem is the input lag. So I can get 60 frames on any game. I can use motion interpolation on this LG C1. So the TV does one frame, one fake frame in between. So I get 120. And then on top of that, this LG C1 can do black frame insertion. So I get 240 in motion clarity, actually, or beyond. Like Alex is saying on, when he talks about black frame insertion, Alex, the one that is doing this video, he got a C1, an LG C1, and he said, oh, I tried black frame insertion at 120. It looks better than my 300 hertz laptop screen. And I shared that on a previous video, his opinion about black frame insertion. He said, highly recommended. It is amazing. So the problem is that I need to use VSync for black frame insertion, because for black frame insertion you need a rock solid 120 frames, no drops. VSync needs to be on. But look at the latency. So this is probably about the same latency I am getting already with my LG C1. And the second thing is that he said on this video, if you are going to force VSync on the NVIDIA control panel, you have to make sure that the GPU is always close to 100%. Otherwise, the latency is even worse. So that's counterintuitive, and he mentioned that on his video. What I do to use the motion interpolation from this LG C1 is all the opposite. I get 60 frames on a game, and I make sure that the GPU never goes beyond 80%. It's always below 80%, and that gives me an improved latency. Okay, and that's usually the way it works, but he's saying that the way this motion interpolation is working, you actually need to make sure that the GPU is always maxed out. So if you do that, you're going to drop below 120, unless the game has dynamic resolution scaling like Spider-Man. So that might work much better in that case. But still, the latency he's saying is gonna be bad. So yeah, my C1 is doing a better job, so they need to fix that. Unfortunately, that's bad. That's bad. And also the DLSS 3.0 frame creation is probably going to be supported on the 2000 and 3000 series soon. So yeah, I have a big problem with that. So in my opinion, let me show you now some performance numbers here from Joker Production. In my opinion, the 4090 is for a 240 hertz OLED screen, period. Because, bro, don't get an LCD screen with a 4090, please. If you get an OLED screen with a console, you're getting a better picture quality, okay? The screen is the most important component to your gaming experience. And having a self-emissive display like this OLED TV, with perfect blacks and HDR, is much more important than 240 frames per second, okay? But now you can get both. The new OLED gaming monitors that are 240 hertz are coming. They are most of them are ultra wide, which I'm not a big fan of, but it makes sense because it's less demanding to run. It's actually 1440p of 1440 lines of resolution. So they are ultra wide. So that would be my recommendation. I don't want that. I want 4K 240. I would get the 4090 with the 4K 240. It has to be 48 inches or bigger. Size matter. The bigger the better for screens. And I would need to have let me show you the numbers here. I would need to have a faster CPU too. So the 4090 doesn't make sense for my system, is my point. So you see here, Joker production it has a 4090 and he has a 9900K, and he's getting below 60 consistently. He's getting below 60, 57, 54 frames, 50, 57, 52. So I am already getting a much better performance than that on my system. Let me show you. But of course, he engages DLSS frame creation, and it improves a lot. So I am already getting a much better performance. Let me show you my settings here. So I get all the graphics maxed out, and I'm using dynamic resolution scaling at 100 frames. So I am just CPU bottleneck. So I am getting, as an average, 90 frames, and it drops down to 60 on demanding areas. So I would not use the ray tracing on this game anyway, because it performs so much better without it, and the ray tracing is broken in my opinion. It has some artifacts that are ugly. I just don't even like it. But if you want to max out the game, I'm already getting a better performance than he was getting. And I just got one stutter here for some reason. The game doesn't stutter at all. No stutters. So yeah, this is already a better experience. So engaging DLSS 3.0 frame creation is going to double the frame rate. I'm gonna show you that when he actually uses that. But the problem is the latency is not double. The latency is actually worse. So I am getting a much more responsive experience than him. So he's going to now turn on that frame creation. Wow, the frame rate is like 100, 120, 150 frames per second looking at the sky there. So the problem is that is going to feel like 60 frames per second for him. As an average, that feels like 60. So it looks better, but it feels like 60. So me getting 90 frames, feeling like 90, is a better experience than what he's getting there. And the problem is, if I get over 120 on this LGC1 with that DLSS, you get some tearing if you don't use full screen and window. So you know, in G-Sync you have two options: full screen only, and you have full screen and borderless or window it. So you have to use that so you don't get tearing. And then it's going to cap at 120. You're not going to go beyond 120 anyway. So yeah, it is not going to be a transformative experience for me. So if I get that 4090 right now, I am not going to get a much better experience. Of course, Cyberpunk, these ray trace demanding games are going to benefit, but I don't like Cyberpunk anyway. I don't play that game. I just don't like it. Not a big fan of it. So it's new ray trace games are coming, but we don't have a lot of them that are worth it. You know, Metro Exodus, for example, the ray tracing is great, is amazing, but yeah, I hope they update the DLSS, because you just have the first iteration of DLSS, which has a lot of ghosting, and that's a lot more important for me than ray tracing. So yeah, it is not what I need right now. So for the 4090, I need 240 hertz OLED screen. It has to support black frame insertion at 240, and ideally I want the black frame insertion to be supported at custom refresh rates. So if I cannot get that level of performance, I can adjust it. And I need a faster CPU. I need a faster CPU so I can get way over 120, or at least get 120 rock solid. So yeah, that's my opinion. That's my take. I really like it. Of course, it's very powerful. I don't care about the price. I don't care. I think it's worth it. The performance is good, but the problem is, if you don't have a good enough screen, it's a waste. It's a waste because you're not seeing it. You're not seeing it. On this LG C1, I can only get 120. 120 is not possible because of the CPU sometimes. So now, DLSS frame creation is going to double the frame rate, but it's going to feel like 60. So if I can get 100 frames, real frames, that's gonna be better than 60 with a higher resolution, looking like 120. And then I cannot use VSync because the input lag is gonna be very bad, so I cannot use black frame session. So it's like, it would make a lot of sense if this LG C1 was 240 Hertz with HDR. Then awesome, I can get that 4090, my CPU can give me like 100 frames, that frame creation is gonna give me like 200, so it's going to overcome that sample and hold blurriness, which is the whole point of that frame creation, and then I can get HDR. Awesome. But I don't have that screen. It doesn't work. Frame creation doesn't work very well with VSync, and the 4090 is overkill for 60 frames. So right now it's a no man's land, in my opinion, that 4090, because your CPU is not fast enough and your screen is not good enough, in my opinion. And please don't get a 4090 and play that with an LCD screen, please. If you want the best of the best, you have to have an OLED. You have to. It doesn't make any sense to get that $1,600 graphics card and play on an LCD screen, man. It doesn't matter if the LCD screen is 300 frames per second, 300 hertz, 360, unless you are ultra competitive. The OLED, it makes such a much bigger difference, and HDR especially makes a much bigger difference than any ray tracing or any graphical settings. So yeah, that's my take. This is my 5800 X3D 3080 12 gigabytes. The game is maxed out, and for some reason the game crashed. And yeah, I'm getting like 90 100 frames. So yeah, it is already an experience that's difficult to beat, and getting the 4090 is gonna be disappointing in my opinion with my current system. So I need a 240 Hz OLED, I need a faster CPU, and then the 4090 make more sense. So just let me know what you think about it, if you're getting one, if you already got one, and share your experience.